By Elena Barabee and Marissa Melamed relating to the AHEAD model. We're going to have a brief update, and we've noted a potential executive session. For that, I'll turn it to Ms. Barabee and Ms. Melamed.
Thank you, Chair Foster. Good afternoon. Thanks, Abby, for posting and projecting the slides for us this afternoon. My name is Marissa Melamed. I'm Deputy Director for Health Systems Policy for the Green Mountain Care Board. The presentation that I have for you today is a brief one. The purpose of today's meeting is to make you all aware that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is introducing significant policy and operational changes to the AHEAD model signed by Vermont in January. I'm going to go over the high-level timeline and those changes as we know them. We noticed a potential executive session for today, as Chair Foster said, if the board wishes to further discuss preparations for negotiation of a new agreement, and the board's policy staff will come back to the public and the board when we have additional information to share as we proceed working through the new model terms. Next slide. So there's the agenda, and you can go to the next slide. So as a reminder, there are 3 signatories for the state of Vermont to enter into a state agreement with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The 3 signatories are the Governor's Office, the Agency of Human Services, and the Green Mountain Care Board. So CMS, under the Trump administration, is requiring a renegotiation of the terms of the agreement that the state signed in January, and the amendment will include significant policy and operational changes and an updated timeline. The Green Mountain Care Board will need to evaluate and review those changes, as will AHS and the Governor's Office. And then the Green Mountain Care Board will then need to vote as to whether to authorize the chair to sign on to the new model. Our prior execution of the old state agreement does not carry over to the new model with the amendment and new terms. And also, as a reminder, Vermont Act 167 of 2022 delegated development of the model to the Agency of Human Services in collaboration with the Green Mountain Care Board. And so in terms of how the federal money flows, the Agency of Human Services is the federal award recipient. The Green Mountain Care Board is the subrecipient through a memorandum of understanding with AHS. Next slide. The last time the board met to discuss AHEAD was April 30th of 2025. At that time, CMS had only recently lifted the federal communication hold on the model. Since then, CMS has released some additional information on model changes and indicated a negotiation or renegotiation timeline. The Green Mountain Care Board has not dedicated significant resources to evaluation of the changes in the months they have been in development since then, while we were waiting for more finalized terms to review so that we can be most efficient with those resources. Today's meeting is to prepare the board to move forward on analytic priorities and how to expend those resources for analysis to help with negotiation. And it's based on the information that has been provided by CMS to date. It's unlikely that we'll get all the information and answers to questions that we need or want. Remember, the previous agreement that was signed by the state in January was negotiated for more than a year before it was signed. So board members will likely need to make decisions based on whatever information is available and by prioritizing analysis of that information. If you look at the timeline I have posted there, the new policy and operational changes were announced or started to be posted publicly by CMS early on in September. There have been a couple. I think the webinar that had been scheduled for yesterday was, I think, maybe the second public webinar going over the new changes. However, this most recent one had to be rescheduled or is being rescheduled to an unknown time because of the federal shutdown. Though prior to the shutdown, the timeline that they gave us is that amendment negotiations would recommence in the first quarter of 2026. Then the Green Mountain Care Board would need to work on negotiation, evaluation, and then potentially vote. on new terms. CMS's proposed date for executing an agreement is July of 26. So it's a pretty condensed timeline. And then their proposed new start date for cohort 2, which Vermont has been approved to move into cohort 2, would be January 1 of 2028. So that's a year later than previously thought, which was January 1, 2027. However, our understanding is that it's negotiable. There are some conflicting times posted on their website, but my understanding is January 1, 2028 is the official new start date. Next slide, please. So this slide is a high-level summary of information posted by CMS that can be found on the following websites. The links that you see below, they were posted on September 2nd. Information as far as we have it available is on all of these websites. Next slide. And the high level kind of points of the changes that you'll see and can read about. These are not listed here in importance of priority in any way, but just to point people to areas that are new. They're going to allow the addition of 2 more states, which I think is in recruitment, which would be cohorts 4 and 5. There's the addition of what's known as a GEO-AHEAD ACO model for beneficiaries that are unassigned to an accountability model. So this is a reintroduction of an ACO model into AHEAD. There's the addition of choice and competition policy initiatives. Shorthand for that is CHOMP. And these are policy requirements to align the model with goals of CMS under the new administration. What was previously the population health accountability plans will be replaced by state health equity plans. And importantly to note, because it's significant to Vermont, is that the new model removes the option for states with statewide hospital rate setting or budget setting authority to establish a state-designed hospital global budget methodology for Medicare fee-for-service. So there's only the option to use the CMS-designed methodology, of which the most recent version is posted, and there could be some area for negotiation in there, but we no longer have the option to do our own state-designed methodology. And again, known information and posted specifications are on that link. Next slide. So that brings me to the end of the public information that we have today. Again, we noticed a potential executive session for this afternoon so that the board can discuss preparations for negotiation of a new agreement. This slide has the legal requirements for going into executive session. I don't think I need to read through this here, but for reference. And then the following slide has 3 motions, potential motion language, which I can help you with, and Michael Barber is also on and available to answer questions. But if you go to the next slide, Abby, with the motions. So motion 1 or 2. Motion 1 is that if the board finds that premature general public knowledge of confidential attorney-client communication with the board's counsel regarding potential amendments to the AHEAD state agreement, if you want to discuss anything that would be confidential attorney-client communication, that's what motion 1 is for. Motion 2 is for contract negotiations. You can correct me if I got any of that wrong, Mike. And motion 3 would put the board into executive session under either or both of those terms. And so I'm open to questions, or I don't know if we do public comment to Chair Foster, but I'll turn it over to you.
I have a few questions I'd like to ask publicly, some of which you may know, many of which you may not, but I'll just note them publicly for the record. We'll
Okay.
take public comment and then we'll see if there's a motion for executive session. But I'll start with the other board members if they have any questions or comments to start, and I'll ask mine last.
I guess I'm most interested in hearing your questions. So maybe I don't have any specific ones at this point.
Okay, sure. I'm happy to go then. Ms. Melmet, some of the changes you mentioned an ACO-based model, but it looked like it was actually a little bit broader than that. The geo entities under the FAQs looked like it could include not only ACOs or providers, but health plans and digital health companies. Do I have that right?
Yes, yes, you do. So it's a much broader definition of what an ACO is, and it may not meet the definition of ACO under Vermont statute if they're not provider-led organizations. So that's something that we're looking into.
So then, and again, don't speculate or conclude anything. We just noting the question, you can move on. But I have a question about how that relates to our regulation. Obviously, currently we regulate ACOs. We don't regulate at the Care Board digital health companies. But if the backbone of the reform is using a digital health company or a health plan to be the geo entity, that's a difference from how we've previously regulated healthcare. And I know we've changed our rule and we have a potential vote notice, but that's a different consideration. The other question I had about the state no longer sets the hospital budgets. So obviously as a state, we want to have as much Medicare money coming in to support our hospitals and all of our providers. How are the hospital budgets set under this model, if you can answer that now?
I don't think I can answer that now. Yeah, I'm not going to answer that now.
Procedurally, with regard to setting the hospital budgets, do you know now whether or not the Care Board or hospitals would have input on how the hospital budgets are set by Medicare?
I don't think I can answer that now. I don't know if anyone else can answer that now because I have not done an evaluation of the methodology, of the current methodology that they have. That's what we're that's a next step that we're needing to do in order to be able to answer that.
And a lot of my questions will definitely be next steps, but I just want to flesh them out a little bit.
Great.
Is it still a voluntary model for hospitals?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. And do you have any sense of the timing between when the hospitals would have information as to how a hospital budget would be set or a straw model on a hospital budget and when the state would need to sign on to the new agreement? And what I'm getting at is if it's voluntary, they need to have information as to how this would impact their financials.
Yeah.
And we kind of need to know where they're at before we go ahead and invest all this time and money in evaluating it and potentially signing on.
There's a calculator that's posted, and there was a hospital-specific webinar, which I believe some of our hospitals attended. We were also told on that calculator that it's not meant to be used for decision-making purposes, that it's for demonstration and illustration of the model. And so I don't know how helpful that is or was to the hospitals, but we would need more specific analysis beyond what's currently available, to my understanding, to help hospitals make that decision.
Okay. And then what's the contract, if you know at this time, what's the contracting look like with the hospitals? Would they be, who are they contracting with? Would it be with the geo entities or would it be, who would they be contracting with?
I'd rather not answer because I don't want to get it wrong. But my understanding about the GEO entities is that they would bid with Medicare directly because they're picking up beneficiaries that are not aligned in any other way under another accountability model. So that's what I know about potential, the contracting of the potential GEO entities, that they're in a direct relationship with CMS.
And then the population health accountability plans, is that something the state is responsible for creating? And is that an AHS responsibility?
I don't know off the top of my head who's responsible for it, but I believe it's AHS.
And then these are very esoteric, kind of big questions, but and no response required. But as with the prior version of the model, I am continually concerned about ensuring access, patient choice, quality, and ensuring that care is not stunted. Obviously, if you have a cap, the easiest way to get to it is to stent care, and making sure there's appropriate mechanisms to protect against those downsides of this type of model is incredibly important to me as we continue to evaluate it. And my last question is, there's a total cost of care. The state's accountable for it. The GEO entities have bids, and they're responsible for trying to, comply with their bid and have savings under the bid. We've used the term delta total cost of care, delta TCOC, to represent the difference between our state target and what we actually spend. And the hope is the state target is higher than what we actually spend. And then there's some money left over, the delta. And ideally, the state can draw down that money and reinvest it in our healthcare system, or use it for any number of purposes consistent with the program. Do you know of a mechanism by which the state in this new model can draw down any savings?
I do not know how we would do that same mechanism. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but it's less clear.
All right, thank you very much. I don't have anything else publicly at this time.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question, Chair Foster?
Of course.
With regard to the potential for stenting and ensuring access to care, one of the things that we had talked about with the first conversation round ahead was making sure that we had measures of access in the year prior to entering into the agreement, so that we'd be able to identify any deltas in access. And so we had talked about making sure that we had monitoring in place beforehand. Do we know if from any of the conversations with AHS, whether there's a movement towards really trying to understand measuring access before we enter into any agreement?
There are population health measures, and I believe that those are the same and not necessarily part of the terms of the renegotiation, but I'm not sure. I mean, part of what I want to make clear is that the new terms, which we have not received yet, are significant. That it's potentially new terms across the entire agreement. So I'm kind of unable to say for sure what's going to remain and what would change. But access measures have been established. I believe they could be the same. They could be renegotiated, but they're the ones that were part of the original agreement theoretically could carry over. I don't know how that is potentially renegotiated or measured, and that is to say could be improved upon from our original agreement, or changed in some other way. But I can't say for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick clarifying question. I cannot remember if the total cost of care was broader than just the hospital budgets, or I think it was broader than the hospital budgets. So who's setting the total cost of care under the new model?
My understanding is that calculation of that would be turned over to CMS in CMS designed methodology under this model, that the state designed methodology, the way we did it in the all payer model, would not carry over.
not carryover.
Under these
just
new terms.
under the new terms. So there's a total cost of care that includes all healthcare spending, and then there's global hospital budgets for the hospital portion. And so all the other spending also comes under that, but is not controlled by the Green Mountain Care Board.
As far as I know.
Sorry, sorry, it might be not
No,
much
that's
of a
okay.
question then.
I understand. No, please ask. I'm not prepared to answer a lot of these questions. As Chair Foster noted, it's important that we ask them. And these are the kinds of questions that we need to get answered, and it's going to require, engagement with our contractors and analysts in order to get all these questions answered. So I don't want it to make it sound like, there's just things that I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just note that there was a pretty long blackout period and some of the details have remained a bit scant. So this hearing that we're having is potentially even premature just because we don't even have the information yet for some of these. But I do think it's really valuable to get them out there, and given the public transparency role we have, doing that as well. I think if my memory serves, and I shouldn't speculate, but I think the total cost of care is part of what we negotiate, and then CMS sets the hospital budgets from there. But the total cost of care would include things outside of the Green Mountain Care Board's control for sure, and then the TCOC would be negotiated. Dr. Merman?
Yeah, just my memory of this is that the total cost of care also includes spending outside of the state that's attributed to Medicare beneficiaries who choose Vermont as their state of residence, and that in the prior agreement, and I don't know, I've not heard anything about this agreement, but the prior agreement, we have had some carve outs to look at out of state spending differently, and for people who maybe reside out of state as well. So, but yes, the total cost of care does include all spending that's attributed to Medicare beneficiaries who have Vermont as their residence.
Member Holmes?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the list of things that I think that we need to consider as we're moving forward is what lessons we learned from the all-payer model and the ACO. And as we're thinking about a geo risk-bearing entity, how do we not repeat mistakes that we've made in the past as we're going into this model? So an analysis of what are those lessons learned, I think would be helpful. And I do want to make sure that there's some analysis happening around the expected dollars flowing into the state under the AHEAD model versus the next best alternative if we assumed a trajectory of Medicare fee-for-service. And with also the understanding that there are costs to being involved in this model, reporting costs, regulatory costs. And so netting out the costs of being in AHEAD, net of the dollars flowing into the state from AHEAD, from the federal government, net of the cost of actually being a part of AHEAD, comparing that to fee-for-service if we didn't enter the model. So I hope that there's some analysis that we will be able to see as we understand more about this new global budget methodology. Thanks.
Any other board member comment or question for the public session? Okay. I'll turn to the healthcare advocate.
I just have one thing there. I think, Jess, I totally agree with that. And I think that we should also think about trying to understand the cost to Vermont Medicare beneficiaries as well when we think about how this model gets rolled out. And the reason why I bring that up is that how do we think about the patient's share of the Medicare expense in the model versus not in the model, which gets a little bit in the weeds of this. But if we're thinking about a global payment, we have to think about how does the cost sharing occur within the global payment. And so I think that's just another thing to think about, funds flow into the state, but also the expense to Vermonters associated with the two different options.
Hi, Chair Foster. This is Charles Becker from the HCA. We have no comments today on these materials. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I believe I saw Mr. Del Treco. I don't know if you or the hospitals have any comment or questions for the public session.
I do not at this time. Thank you for reaching out.
Great. Okay. Any other public comment via raise the hand? Hey, Walter, how are you?
Hey, Owen, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Well, no worse, as we say. I'm still above the ground somehow. I just have an overall comment. Dave pretty much asked my question about cost to us Medicare folks who already are burdened with costs as it is, whether it's the silly Advantage thing or just traditional Medicare and the Medigap programs. And I'm paying close to $400 a month now. But my overall question is, A, do we really need this crazy ahead thing? And B, what happens to it when it too fails?
Those are big questions, Walter. I think that's
Well,
sort of
I think of the ACO. Jessica mentioned it, which kind of gave me the idea for the question. I think of the ACO. That was a 10-year colossal screw up, I guess is the best way to put it. Now it's canceled. This ahead model will probably go south someday. Who knows what the Trumpers are going to do to this? No doubt they're probably going to make it an authoritarian regime kind of thing. I just don't. A, do we need it? B, what happens if we sign on, etc. We get approved, and then it just flops and they come up with something else.
Yeah, and that's part of what we're doing. You know, the board had I think a fair amount of trepidation in signing the original version of this, and we had a lot of the same similar questions. At the same time, you know, we have to fairly and objectively evaluate whether or not we, the governor and AHS, think it's the right thing for the state on balance. So a lot of that is getting to Member Merman and Member Holmes's points about, is this actually more money? Is it actually feasible? What's the real ultimate cost? How are we going to prevent the downsides of the model? I think that all is lessons learned from the ACO model. Was that perhaps some of the expectations weren't met, and maybe we could have done a better job as a state analyzing it up front. And I think that's what's causing all of us to have a lot of questions for the models and kicking the tires and doing the diligence that's necessary. So your comments and skepticism are appropriate, and having a lot of diligence is part of the job. And at the same time, if it is beneficial, we should do it, right? So that's where we're at. And I think in the first vote, we had a number of out clauses, things that if they didn't happen that we thought were prerequisites to success, we would exit. So we're conscious of your comments and your remarks, and I think they're fair. So thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, Marissa, would you mind bringing up the draft language for executive session again?
Sure. Abigail, do you have it? Oh, thanks.
Okay. I'm not going to move for legal counsel at this time. We can certainly do that if other board members want, but I think we'll go in. There's a difference. If we go in for counsel, the HCA cannot be present, and I don't think I personally need counsel. So if somebody disagrees and they want legal counsel, we can do that or do that separately. But I'll first move that the board find that premature general public knowledge regarding CMS's proposed policy and operational changes to the HEAD model would clearly place the board and Vermont at a substantial disadvantage in future negotiations with CMS regarding those changes.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and the motion's approved. I move second that the board enter into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1A to consider CMS's proposed policy and operational changes to the HEAD model. Attendance at the executive session will be limited to board members, board staff working on the HEAD model, the board's counsel, and the healthcare advocate.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is approved. Okay, it looks like we have everyone back. We've concluded the executive session. Does anyone have anything else for the public session today? Any new or old business? All right, then I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, we're adjourned. Thank you.